It's been 6 months since the global climate summit COP26 ended, with tears and regret. Climate Conference President Alok Sharma broke down as he apologized for last-minute changes to the wording about coal, from phasing out to phasing down. It's a big deal. Coal is the dirtiest of fossil fuels. It's the most responsible for global warming and the biggest threat to the 2015 Paris climate goals, including limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. That subtle change in wording is something vulnerable nations want richer nations to know is life-threatening.
For those who have eyes to see, for those who have ears to listen, and for those who have a heart to feel, 1.5 is what we need to survive. 2 degrees, yes, SG, is a death sentence.
Strong words. Let's look at the other words from COP26 that lay out its agreed objectives before we look ahead to COP27 with our guests. Julie.
Well, to actively fight against global warming, Steve, COP26 was structured around the following 4 main objectives. 1, reach carbon neutrality by 2050 and keep global warming to below an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius. 2, adapt to protect communities and natural habitats, particularly those most threatened by climate change. 3, mobilize climate finance to at least $100 billion a year to achieve the first 2 goals. And 4, work together to achieve carbon neutrality. Fortunately or unfortunately, the countries that are the biggest contributors to the problem also have the greatest power to make it right. Steve, you've got the main players?
China is by far the world's biggest emitter of CO2, Julie, with about 58% of the total energy generated by China in 2019 coming from coal alone. Worth noting, though, that China is one of the biggest investors in wind and solar. The United States is second, but with CO2 emissions per capita almost double that of China's. India is third. It has made the bold pledge to meet 50% of its electricity requirements from renewable sources by 2030. Russia is fourth. It failed to submit ambitious plans to cut emissions before COP26, as required under the Paris Climate Accord. Japan is fifth. Last year, it said it would aim to cut 46% of CO2 emissions by 2030, doubling a previous commitment. Those are the top 5 culprits, but it will take a whole-of-world effort to make things right. Julie's looking at the 2 main strategies to combat climate change.
The first is mitigation. This can be done in several ways. For example, stopping deforestation and regenerating nature through reforestation, or by using technology for carbon capture. This means that any CO2 produced from industry and power generation isn't allowed to escape into the atmosphere. Another way is by ditching fossil fuels altogether and using renewable sources for energy production, such as wind and solar. The same applies for transportation. Now, for this, wide adoption of electric vehicles that don't emit CO2 would be needed. Even existing buildings can be improved by retrofitting them with green technology and practices. We can make them more energy efficient and reduce their CO2 footprint. For those things that we can mitigate for, we'll have to find ways to adapt to. For rising sea levels, low-lying areas will have to build up seawalls, elevate their infrastructure, or in some cases, just relocate. In areas where water is scarce, reducing and reusing this vital resource will be key. Connected to water availability, we may have to change the type of things we grow and where we grow them. This would include urban farming, in large buildings and at a smaller scale in our own homes. And lastly, protecting the world's carbon sinks by proactively using prescribed burning to prevent uncontrollable wildfires.